great content, the great conversation we're about to have about the spookiest Catholic books you can buy. It's coming up right after this. Welcome, everyone, to the Awaken Catholic Show. I am your host, Nick De La Torre, and before we get into this conversation with Tony, I got to let you know that this episode and all of our presence here at the Momentum '21 conference with the Catholic Marketing Network is made possible by Select International Tours, the sponsors of this episode and everything that we've been doing here, all of the episodes, all of the live streams we've been doing. If you don't know about Select, you better fix that by visiting selectinternationaltours.com/awaken. You can learn about the 2 pilgrimages we're taking with them this year. I'm going on one to the Holy Lands myself with my wife, Alina, that you could join us for. And there's so many more happening. So many great speakers and authors and podcasters that are going with Select, the premier pilgrimage company in the United States. Make sure to check them out. Once again, that's selectinternationaltours.com/awaken. Tony, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you here. Truly, when you're is she your assistant or your agent, or what is the?
Kathy Nipper is
She's
a
your Kathy.
publicist for
publicist.
Loyola Press.
Okay.
Who is working with me along with some other authors, and she's very good at what she does.
Okay, fantastic. Well, when your publicist approached our booth and she says, "Listen, I'm representing this author who wrote a series of Catholic fiction books." Immediately my interest was perked because my wife and I love fiction. She's in the middle of, actually she just sent me a message a little bit ago today that she's rereading one of the Chronicles of Narnia books. And you know, we love getting into this stuff. And I was just like, are you freaking kidding me? Of course we're gonna talk about these fiction Catholic books. So where did this start? Like, what gave you the idea to, have you always been an author, number one, and an author of this kind?
Okay, so like so many others, I have written my whole life, most of it trash, but not this.
I don't believe you.
No, but as a kid, you know, of course, writing, you know, I was knocking off Star Wars and Lord of the Rings like you wouldn't believe. But I went into the Air Force. I spent 21 and a half years in the Air Force. I actually retired as a JAG. I now teach law at the University of North Texas College of Law, their Dallas College of Law. But I've been writing this series, The Harwood Mysteries, for about 15 years. Loyola picked it up a few years ago, and the first one, Shadow in the Dark, came out last July. Haunted Cathedral, Book 2, came out in February of this year, and literally just this month, The Fire of Eden, Book 3 was released. Book 4 is going to be next year.
So this is Shadow in the Dark, if it'll get in focus here.
Yes, you got to look, I mean, the covers that Loyola put together for this are incredible.
That is beautiful. And then we have the Haunted Cathedral, Book 2.
Which is Book 2, right?
Yeah.
In February.
Gorgeous. And then the one that just came out, The Fire of Eden.
Fire of Eden with that Gandalf-looking wizard character on the front. I love that cover.
Yeah, that is super cool. And do you have a title yet for book number 4?
Well, I have my title. I don't want to say anything because Loyola might decide not to go with it.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Well, that is just super exciting. And what was the... Like, give me an overview, a synopsis of the plot.
Yeah, so it's actually historical fiction for teens and tweens, kind of a mystery adventure series, if you will. It takes place in 12th century England. So we're in about 1184 AD. My main character is Alexander, or Zan, who's 11 years old in book 1. And his best friend, Lucy, is also throughout the series about the same age with him. And so what winds up happening in Shadow is we have some pretty tragic events go on in Zan's village. It's attacked by bandits. He winds up at this abbey, this Benedictine abbey called Harwood Abbey. And that's where we get the title, The Harwood Mysteries.
So
and in book 1, Shadow in the Dark, basically Zan, he loses his memory. He doesn't know what's going on. Where's my family? Why am I at this abbey? Because he gets found by the monks. And then there's this kind of spooky, shadowy figure walking around the abbey grounds at night, spooking the little kids who are at the abbey with him. And he's trying to figure out, what does that have to do with anything? The bandits are attacking the abbey. So there's all these various things going on, and he's trying to figure out, what does this have to do with me? And then more importantly, he's also trying to figure out, why is God allowing this to happen? The monks talk about God's will. And he's like, well, what do you mean God's will? Like what's happening in my life? And so book 1 has a lot about suffering too. And the whole series is really about vocation. What does God want me to do with my life?
Wow.
Because Anne's going to have some decisions, and Lucy too. should I become a monk? Should I not? Should I marry? Should I go become a merchant with my uncle? I mean, there's all these decisions that he has to make. So book one is sort of that shadow mystery. And I guess this might be a good place to say book one has done very well with awards. You can see I've got a few of the stickers on there, but it's won 6 book awards, including the Association of Catholic Publishers and the Catholic Media Association, and 4 others. And so it's done very well with with the reviewers, and I'm very thrilled with that.
I keep holding them up so that as you're talking about them, the audience knows what to look for when they're looking it up.
Please do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
and
that
by the
was
way,
book one.
before we move on to book 2, someone watching the live stream, his name is Pete, says, "Thank you for your service to our country." I agree.
Thank you, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I can tell you the Air Force probably was better to me than I ever was to the Air Force. They actually put me to through law school.
Oh, wow.
And so thank you, Pete, because the taxpayer helped make me a lawyer. Thank you.
Well, then me too.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I pay my taxes.
Sorry, I didn't realize that. I thought you might have been a tax evader.
Oh, gosh. Do I give off that vibe?
No.
All right, so let's talk about book 2.
Book 2, Haunted Cathedral. So this is really a book about forgiveness, because Zan winds up traveling from the Abbey to Lincoln, England, where Lincoln Cathedral is located. There's a major historical event. I actually based the series partly around this big event that takes place in book 2. I won't tell you about it because it would spoil the ending. But it takes place in Lincoln Cathedral in 1185 AD. So Zan has to travel to Lincoln with the bandit who killed his family. And so this bandit is kind of repentant, but Zan is not in a forgiving mood. And so book 2 is a lot about forgiveness versus hatred. He's struggling with that. And as he's trying to figure out, is this cathedral haunted by the ghost of a little girl? And if it is, maybe I can get this ghost to help communicate with my family, who I've lost.
Wow.
And so he's got that whole thing going on, and he's talking to the monks, well, what's the difference between a ghost and a saint? And so those kinds of conversations go on in the book. It's kind of interesting. And it's an exciting book, really good one. Maybe my favorite of the 3 so far, I'll tell you the truth.
Okay.
Except for book 4, which hasn't come out yet. That might be my new favorite.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so then book 3.
So book 3, Fire of Eden. This is a jewel thief, mystery. Who stole the thief? Who done it? Zan travels to another monastery called Grenton Priory with Brother Andrew, his mentor, and it's Brother Andrew's ordination. It's going to take place at this priory, and Brother Andrew actually comes from money before he gave up all of his money to become a monk, and this jewel that belongs to his family, Eden's Fire is the name of the jewel, hence the title, The Fire of Eden. It's not a romance book. Don't get it confused. And it gets stolen on the eve of Brother Andrew's ordination. And amongst the potential, thieves is this wizard-looking guy, looks like Gandalf a little bit, who's living not far from the Abbey, the magician. And so they're trying to figure out who stole this jewel. And Zan and Lucy, at the same time in this book, are trying to figure out, what am I going to do with my life? Lucy has to determine, is she going to become a nun and go back to the convent? Zan has an uncle who he met in Lincoln, who it turns out he could go be a merchant's apprentice with him. That's a big decision. Or does he stay with the monks and become a novice monk? So there's also that kind of vocational thing going on here.
That's awesome. So what would you compare the writing style and the storytelling? Are there any other book series or standalone books that you would compare, like in case someone has a reference point, So
when I wrote these books, I had a 12-year-old son. We were homeschooling. We're a homeschooling family. I've got 5 kids. I should have mentioned that. Four daughters and a son. And Harry Potter was in its full glory. And I said, you know what? I'd love there to be like a Catholic series that would have the same kind of a vibe of Harry Potter.
And does it?
Which it totally does. It's got the same fast-moving kind of a plot. It's got the kind of spookiness of things, except it doesn't involve actual witches and wizards. It involves, 12th century monks and bandits and things like that. But so that was the vibe I was going for. I wanted it to be accessible to teens and tweens today, and because there's some great literature from way back when, but it's a little bit stale compared to how our kids read today.
Yeah.
So it's got that vibe, but I also wanted it to have like this sort of good religious themes. Some of you might not know about Brother Cadfael, the Ellis Peters series of books about a monk who used to solve mysteries. It was very popular.
Oh, I have heard of that.
Brother Cadfael. So I always thought of this as like Harry Potter meets Brother Cadfael. It's kind of how I put it in my mind.
Well, my kids right now are super into Harry Potter, so you're talking my language, baby.
Yes, I mean, and the kids who read it, and of course, you don't hand it to them and say, hey, this is a religious book, right?
Of course not.
You say this is an excellent story, because that's primarily what it is. It's a mystery adventure with a lot of really cool stuff, and it's a little spooky, so that's why I would say 9 or 10 years old, mostly because, you don't want to spook out the tiny little kids in the house, because there's some spookiness in there.
Okay, all right.
So the kids like it for that, and then the parents, like you, they're like, yeah, but check out all the really cool theology and location and all these other things.
It's like you can circle back afterwards and say, now look at what these deep, profound things that were happening. Look at this.
Yeah, and the monk, the main monk is Brother Andrew, and the main nun is Sister Regina, and they are very, very wise. I mean, and so they are able to give Zan some great advice. I appreciate that you gestured
to me when you said wise.
They're very wise, like yourself and your wife, I'm sure. And so you get some good, like the things that I would want to tell my kids, kind of sometimes come out of the mouth of the monk and the nun.
Beautiful. Here. That's awesome. Well, Tony, great work in putting this together. I love what inspired it, too, was your own kids and the desire for them to have something like this. So.
Yeah, and I want to actually give you some information you might not have recognized, because you talked about Catholic fiction. Of course, I'm part of the Catholic Writers Guild. We have a big presence here. But for those families, those of you who have teens and tweens, and you're like, of course you're going to want to get this series.
Of course.
But there are a lot of great Catholic fiction books out there. I work with 16 other very devout, good Catholic authors on a website called CatholicTeenBooks.com. CatholicTeenBooks.com. Check it out. There are so many awesome series out there. Some of them are like dystopian series. Some of them are modern sort of high school series. And a lot of our authors are here. A.J. Catapan has one of her famous books, Seven Riddles to Nowhere, is about a kid at a Catholic school that's closing down, and he's got to try to, do a fundraiser or whatever, or find something to keep it open. So there's a lot of good Catholic fiction out there. This is not the only series.
I just punched that URL into the chat if you're watching the live stream, CatholicTeenBooks.com.
CatholicTeenBooks.com, and there's a lot of other things even outside of that, but especially for families. Yeah. When I was writing these books, I had no idea that there was other Catholic fiction out there, and there was a lot less of it when I started writing these. But now, families, they have someplace they can go to and find it.
Awesome. Well, Antony Barone Kolenc, it's been awesome having you here. I'm super excited to dive into these with my family. Where can people find these?
All right, so you can of course get them on Loyola Press's website. You can go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, ChristianBook.com, all of the usual places online. What I always like to tell people, especially if I'm talking to Catholics, is go to your Catholic bookstore. Ask them to stock it or at least order it, and give your business to mom and pop Catholic who are struggling against the Amazons in the world right now. But if you have to go to Amazon, and I go to Amazon a lot,
Tony.
It's there.
Wow.
I know.
Do you even care about the mom and pop shops?
I know. I feel guilty, but not guilty enough to stop.
Yeah, don't we all? That's awesome. All right. Well, man, thanks so much for being here and for bringing these to the audience, and I'm excited. I hope that you, viewers, listeners, if you're watching the live stream or tuning in afterwards on the recording, make sure to check out the CatholicTeenBooks.com. Do you have a website personally?
Yes, it's AntonyKolenc.com, or I also have TheHarwoodMysteries.com. Okay. You can find everything you need to know about the books there.
Rock on. Awesome. Tony, been great to have you here, brother.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been Nick De La Torre. This has been Antony Barone Kolenc, and this has been the Awaken Catholic Show. And before we go, I got to let you know that this was all made possible by SelectInternationalTours.com/awaken. Please don't go before you hear me say this. Jesus loves you.